In November of 2023, I spoke to one of the doctors who worked on me when I was in the London hospital. I met with this doctor as part of a follow up MRI after I had been recovering for 1 year. I don't know if this doctor is a Christian or not, but there is no doubt in my mind that God used this doctor to execute this miracle. I discovered in my conversation with this doctor that in the early morning of Thursday, November 10th, 2022, this same doctor I was speaking with just happened to be walking down the halls of the hospital in London when he overheard his colleagues in a room. This doctor thought he would check in on them in the room. When he entered the room, he noticed several of his colleagues distressed as they were looking at some images of a patient. It turns out they had just accidentally torn this patient's carotid artery, and they were unsure what to do next. This doctor, who just happened to be walking down the halls in London, Ontario, and decided to check on his colleagues, said to me, "Phil, I saw my colleagues in distress as they had torn your carotid artery. They were unsure what to do, and I thought maybe I could help." This doctor also said that he recommended that two large tubular stents, like scaffolding, be used to reinforce this torn artery. This doctor also said to me, "After we reinforced your carotid artery with these two stents, we could then focus on the real problem." So after my carotid artery was reinforced with two large tubular stents, the team of doctors who were trying to figure out what to do next then spoke to my family about some options to try and deal with the real problem, the aneurysm burst. Not only is a burst in this location rare, but survival of this burst is also rare. So it is not like there are medical procedures at the ready when this occurs to fix the problem. One of the ideas that was mentioned to my family was to actually remove my brain from my skull and try to repair it and put it back. One of my sisters asked what the chances of this working were, and needless to say, the odds were pretty low. There were quite a few discussions at this point on what should be done, but none of the ideas had a good probability of success since this was a fairly rare event and much of the ideas floated had never been done before. When I spoke about my ordeal in the church in Stratford, I mentioned that a doctor stepped forward after it was discussed with my family about the slim chances of my survival. This is how that occurred. It was around this time when the same doctor I spoke to in November of 2023, and who was the same doctor who was walking the halls in the hospital I was transported to, who felt they should check in on their colleague and ended up recommending that my carotid artery be reinforced with two large tubular stents. This time, asked if he could have a few minutes with the doctors away from my family and my sisters. After a private conversation with these doctors, it was decided that they would attempt to use a new stent, again a tubular stent, to try and rebuild the burst pica that I had. This doctor was aware of a new stent that had been recently developed of the right type, not far from the hospital, that could be used to rebuild my burst artery. So this same doctor who recommended that stents be used to rebuild my carotid artery was the same doctor who just happened to be walking down the halls and check on his colleagues after my carotid artery was torn, was the same doctor who stepped forward again and was aware of this newly created stent in London. My stories that include this doctor are not done yet. My wife equates this moment when she was informed of this option that it reminded her when God used Moses to part the sea in front of the people who were escaping Egypt. She was shown a way forward when there previously was no way.